Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is April 26th. It's a Friday. Today is day 200. It's the 203rd day since October 7th. We're still in Chicago on the Pilgrimage to Peace tour. It is unbelievable to see the footage of the police and their response to protesters on college campuses around the country, the way students and faculty are being treated. I'm wondering if you've seen this on the news. After students at Columbia University set up pro-Palestinian encampments on their campus, at least 40 pro-Palestinian or pro-Palestine protest camps have emerged nationwide following their lead. Students pitched tents, protesting against links between their university and Israeli counterparts and companies calling them to divest. Several of the demonstrations have been met with violence by police who used force to break up the camps and arrest students. In addition, Emory University, there are reports of tear gas and rubber bullets reportedly used in the protest crackdown. There is a video on The Guardian. I will just make note that there is a relationship between the training of our police forces here in the United States and the Israeli army. And for students, if you go to the Guardian website, they talk about why they're protesting against the war in Gaza. And their main point is that injustice should not be accepted. I actually had an interview. I've had a lot of interviews in the last couple of days, but I had one today with Sky News Arabia, not because I speak Arabic, but I think it's really important that people in the Arab world or people who speak Arabic hear American Christians talking about empathy for Palestinians, talking about calling for an end to what's happening in Gaza. And as I described what I've been seeing, in this interview, I said that the images that we're witnessing remind me of Kelly Ingram Park during the Civil Rights Movement. That's a park in Birmingham where the marchers of the Civil Rights Movement were attacked by dogs and police were just brutal with them. It reminds me of the march from Selma to Montgomery across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and how one of the things I was asked in this interview is, do you have any hope from these protests? And I do. I really do, because people are acting on their conviction, and in large part, the protesters are so nonviolent. And I love what the Arab American Institute put out today about the protests. Jim Zogby, the head of their office, he said, in times of crisis, young people lead the way. And AAI, the Arab American Institute, responded, and he described the Arab way of responding to things is by providing food. So they're starting something called Feeding Students Seeking Justice as a campaign. And he analyzed the situation and he said, despite the bombardment of attempts to convince us that these students are troublemakers, ill-informed, or worse than that, anti-Semitic, never forget that the diverse students organizing these protests condemn hateful acts of violence on students. They condemn calls of violence, anti-Semitism, and anti-Arab bigotry, just as we do. This movement is led by students of conscience of all backgrounds, including many Jewish students. And this is a massive effort in the best tradition of the anti-war movement. These students are the best of us. They're making good trouble. May we all be motivated to make good trouble until peace comes and war ends. Gaza is allowed to live and given the opportunity to flourish. Jewish people feel safe and protected. Friends, we have so much work to do. Blinken responded to the protests saying that they are the hallmark of American democracy, but he criticized what he called the silence about Hamas. I did just hear from Israel in the last 24 hours that the next several days, the next 24 to 48 hours will be critical, that we'll either see a breakthrough in terms of the hostage situation, or we will see the invasion of Rafah, which will begin, which of course will kill thousands of civilians and have a devastating effect, or it could launch a broader war. It's believed that the situation with Hezbollah and Israel will break out, which would have even further devastating consequences. That could be delayed because there's news that Secretary Blinken will head to Israel next week. The White House put out a statement saying that President Biden met with 4-year-old Abigail Edan. She's an American girl who was taken hostage by Hamas. Both of her parents were killed on October 7th. And during the meeting, it lasted an hour. Abigail played in the Oval Office. She crawled under the Resolute desk, like the famous picture of John F. Kennedy as a child. She played in the playground of the White House lawn while the president discussed our ongoing efforts to release the remaining hostages with her family. That was the statement that the White House put out yesterday. I don't begrudge President Biden for his empathy for families of the hostages or for that little girl, and we stand with the call to bring the hostages home. But we also call on President Biden to do better. Where is the statement from President Biden to the American family members of the Palestinian American teenagers who were killed earlier this year by the Israeli Defense Forces? Or where was President Biden on the unwavering commitment to stand for the human rights and dignity of the more than 2.3 million people in Gaza who are still scavenging for food and don't have water, and they're being forced to have animal feed for their supper or drink brackish water with high contents of salt and dirt and minerals? Additionally, earlier this week, Vice President Kamala Harris spoke with President Herzog in Israel and underscored the commitment of the U.S. to release the hostage. There's a lot of pressure from the U.S. and other countries on the release of hostages. Things are really heating up in terms of pressure. And so we're going to see a tipping point, either for good or a tipping point in a direction of either more destruction. So Blinken will go to Israel this week. He'll arrive in Israel after going to Saudi Arabia, where he's expected to discuss Gaza and a ceasefire effort. Blinken did say it will be hard to roll out a framework of Israeli-Saudi Arabia normalization along with a two-state solution before a Gaza ceasefire is implemented. He said China can play a constructive role to make sure that the Gaza war doesn't spread because they have critical ties with countries like Iran. Dozens of protesters in Israel, including a delegation of U.S. rabbis, arrived at the Erez checkpoint. That's the checkpoint in the north between Israel and Gaza, with food for Gazans, calling for a ceasefire and the release of hostages. I want to meet those rabbis. One person was arrested and 6 were detained. I wanted to share a story of international activism. The 2024 Freedom Flotilla is ready to set sail. The flotilla that traveled in 2010 had the slogan of the Freedom Flotilla. It was called "We Sail Until Gaza is Free." Those civilian ships were brutally attacked in 2010. 10 passengers were killed, others were wounded. In coming days, this 2024 flotilla is set to sail, and they use these words: amid the ongoing genocide against the Palestinian people in Gaza being carried out by the Israeli regime. The flotilla coalition demands that the U.S. government require assurances from Israel, its client state, that it will comply with provisional measures ordered by the International Court of Justice and permit the ships of the Freedom Flotilla to deliver desperately needed humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza who have been bombed and starved. The Freedom Flotilla Coalition is a civilian initiative. It's carrying 5,500 tons of humanitarian aid and hundreds of international humanitarian observers to the besieged Gaza Strip. There are many U.S. citizens aboard. The demands of the flotilla are immediate, unconditional, and permanent ceasefire, unrestricted access to humanitarian aid, and an end to the illegal Israeli blockade. Turkey is under significant pressure from the U.S. and Israel to block the flotilla from setting sail and achieving its objective of delivering aid and breaking the blockade. And so several scenarios are possible. The best scenario is that they will reach Gaza and accomplish their mission. The second scenario is that Turkish government will have pressure from Israel and the U.S. and Germany and will just even prevent the boats from leaving. The third possibility is that the ships are able to leave, but Israel could illegally, they say, hijack them in international waters, confiscate their boats and supplies, arrest and imprison them, or eventually deport them. That's what happened on several other voyages to Gaza, one of them with deadly consequences. And then they talk about what happened in 2010, where boats were boarded. They say the Israelis, according to a UN report, opened fire with live rounds in a helicopter hovering above the ship from commando boats alongside the ship. In a horrific display of force, 9 passengers were killed and 1 more later succumbed to his wounds. So the boats have had rigorous training, and their call is to give urgency about the danger that this moment presents. We're calling on countries around the world to pressure Israel to allow free and safe passage to Gaza. President Biden is scheduled to give a graduation speech at Morehouse College. This is their most famous graduate is Martin Luther King Jr. Irony of ironies. In an op-ed published in The Guardian by Jared Loggins, a professor of Black Studies and Political Science at Amherst, he wrote that a group of leaders from Faculty for Justice in Palestine joined students in Georgia, where the Atlanta University Center Consortium, a group of calling on the AUCC, a group of historically Black institutions, to account. In a recent statement, calling on Morehouse leadership to rescind the invitation to Biden. So this group that's calling for the protest said any college or university that gives its commencement stage to President Biden in this moment is endorsing genocide. Biden is also delivering the commencement address at West Point. Students around the country, including many that are a part of this Georgia coalition of Black colleges, are standing in the tradition of Dr. King. They do so in the context of a broader movement and crackdown, the most intense this country has seen since 1968. Biden has smeared those students, the very people he needs to secure his electoral prospects, as anti-Semitic and uninformed. College and university administrations set riot police upon them and threaten them with disciplinary action. At precisely the moment when students all over the country are showing us the meaning of courage, Morehouse's invitation to the president shows profound cowardice, similar to, well, I won't name names at this point, but I very well might in the future. The moral leaders in this moment have been clear all along. We should join them. May we have courage, friends. May we have courage. May we not give up hope. May we know that the world is God's to save, but may we do our part as he calls us to in pursuing peace and an end to this horrific attacks and prevent further genocide in Gaza. Amen.